by convention, you only get one shot at writing a requiem. You can write as many operas and symphonies and concertos as you like, but it's pretty much always been the case that composers only ever write a requiem once, that whatever they may want to say on the themes of life and death, and those are big themes, they will probably just want to say it and then move on. The Britten case is rather interesting because Benjamin Britten wrote his Sinfonia da Requiem, which is purely orchestral, in the 1940s, and then returned to the idea of a requiem with vocal forces as well in the War Requiem later. That's a bit of an exception. And I guess I needed to think quite carefully about what sort of a work it would be and the form that it would take. I felt free to choose texts and add to them and subtract from them. So I didn't feel bound by the Mass for the Dead as laid down in Catholic liturgy. But I knew from the first that Gregorian chant, which for me is still the music of the Western Church, would in some way figure in the requiem that I was going to write, and I'll return to that theme later. I thought it would be good to have at least some of the set texts in place. And my requiem, which has 7 movements, begins and ends with the authorized bookend texts of the Requiem Mass. It starts with Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine, which is a prayer to God the Father for the rest of the souls. And the work ends with the Lux aeterna, may light perpetual shine upon them. And so it starts and ends with the correct texts for a traditional requiem. Let's work inwards from there. Movements 2 and 6 are both psalm settings. Now, you do get psalms in funeral services and in the burial service also. And the 2 psalms I chose were ones which seemed to me to illuminate the themes of a requiem. Movement 2 is a very dark psalm, Psalm 130, out of the deep have I called unto thee, O Lord. And I wanted that to be in English, again, because I felt that somehow English and Latin rubbed off one another in quite a creative way. And I didn't want that to be in Latin somehow. Then movement 6, the penultimate movement, The Lord is my shepherd, is perhaps the best loved of all the 150 psalms. And that again, I thought it would be a shame to have in any language other than that of the 1662 Book of Common Prayer. And so those are 2 very familiar and important psalms, which are the next movements in. This is an arch structure, because movements 3 and 5 are both prayers to Christ. Movement 3 is a Pia Jesu, which Fauré was the first renowned composer to separate out and make one little movement of on its own. And I thought I would follow that precedent. And so my Pia Jesu is set for solo soprano with the choir in the background. Then movement 5, Agnus Dei qui tollis peccata mundi, is a prayer to Christ, the Lamb of God, saying, have mercy upon us. So we've got 3 and 5, and that just leaves the centerpiece of the arch, movement 4, the Sanctus, which just simply says, holy, 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 an affirmation of the glory of God. And so there's an arch structure there, and the English texts occur not just in those 2 psalm movements, but also in the Agnus Dei, where I've included words from the burial service, again from the 1662 Book of Common Prayer, I am the resurrection and the life. Words which are very powerful and which seem to just resonate for me in a way that the Latin perhaps wouldn't. So we've got a hybrid work, we've got Latin, we've got English, we've got bits that belong to the Requiem Mass, bits that don't. And that was really the structure I think I had in my mind from the very first. And I think it was in my mind from the very first that this would be a work like the Fauré Requiem, which could equally well be done as a concert work, and alternatively could also be done in church, either as part of maybe a Holy Week devotion, something like that, or possibly even done liturgically. And I have, on occasions, been present when that's been done quite effectively. You have to be fairly free with the liturgy to make it work. But I wanted to write a work that would be equally at home in the concert hall and in church. I think I began writing it. The first idea came to me when I was away from home, staying at my American publisher's house. I always take music paper with me wherever I travel. And the first thing I remember, I was lying in bed one night and I just wrote down this. So that's how it all began.